Hi, this is Odeean here. Today I'm having a look at Soul of Chogokin Godmars GX-40 by Bandai. So the box is pretty big. On the front we've got this silver Godmars text. It's really impressive. It stands out a lot on the box. And this big picture of the combined mode of Godmars along with all the individual robots. The individuals are a bit clearer in their presentation on the top. So we'll get to them one by one later in the review. On the back, we have a little bit of a rundown as to what actually happens here with the figures combining into the Godmars figure, along with this, the Cosmo Crusher, which is made of 3 spaceships. So let's get the box open and have a look at what's inside. Once we get the box open, the first thing is this tray with weapons. It's a bit hard to show on camera, but I'll get to this after the main part of the toy. Next, we have the main styrofoam holder for all the figures. If I can just pan up a little bit. So we've got Uranus, Gaia, Titan, in the middle Sphinx, and then Shin and Raah. These are the guys who make up the Godmars 6 robot combiner. We can peel off this cool old style inset in the box to reveal that on the styrofoam we have embossed the words Godmars and the symbol down here that Godmars has on his belt, which is hard to see, but it's right here in the middle of Sphinx. Okay, let's have a look at the figures one at a time. Before I get too far into the review, I want to go over a bit of the backstory for this character. So the Godmars cartoon has a main character called Mars, who's the son of Zul, Emperor of planet Gishin. And Mars is sent to Earth as a baby. Something goes wrong and he is kind of lost and raised by humans, given the human name Tekaru. Now, along with Mars was sent a planet-destroying bomb called Gaia. Gaia is in the form of a kind of super robot, and they're separated at that time, and Gaia is entombed in this stone statue. It actually looks less like a statue and more like a pile of rocks in the show, but each one of the robots from Godmars has one of these, but in the toy we just get this one. So anyway, to reveal Gaia, all we have to do is split this in half, like so, and here we have the robot Gaia. Gaia is very well done. So he's got die-cast lower legs, die-cast thighs, I think, it's a little bit hard to tell, die-cast groin area here, and I think the rest is plastic. But it's very shiny plastic, so some places it's harder to tell than others. Oh yeah, he's got die-cast heels. He's got a good bit of heft, even though he's a tiny little figure. To give an idea of how tiny he is, here he is next to a War for Cybertron Bumblebee. So you can see he's pretty damn small. In Transformers terms, he's smaller than a basic. As far as posability is concerned, he's got really wide range of posability. I'm not going to go through them one by one because it's pretty self-evident just by looking at this guy that he's got the full gamut of what a Japanese action figure can do, and there's no complaints here. The only thing I will note about him is that he's a little bit of a pissant loser, because every episode of the show involves Gaia coming to the aid of Tekaru, who is hurt or in danger of dying, and then somehow failing to be tough enough to protect him against the enemy of the week, and having to call on the other 5 robots. I gotta admit, I'm only halfway through the series, but it seems to me the only purpose of Gaia is to call the other guys. On a human scale, Gaia is pretty massive. So if I can just focus in here, which is a little bit tricky this close to the camera, there's a little blue section here, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is a tiny little sculpted man behind that panel, and that is actually Mars / Tekaru inside Gaia. So that's what happens. He gets absorbed through this panel here into the chest. Okay, let's move on to some of the other guys in this set. The next character is Sphinx. So Sphinx is the tough guy, the central component of Godmars, like his body, the strong part that holds all the others together, and he's really a block of a character. I like his aesthetic. You can tell he's the strongest one of the group. And something that is also really cool is that Sphinx's head up here is really very different looking than Godmars's head. So they could have gone with, just an ordinary shaped head, and then when you flip it around to reveal Godmars's head, it would have been too similar, and it would have been just like a case of, here's Godmars, the arms and legs join on. But by making his character so different, like this, with this kind of truncated pyramid as a head, it gives him his own character separate from the combined mode. As far as posability is concerned, he's got a fair bit. You can see me playing with his arms here, hands. He's got no waist, a tiny little bit at the hip. He's got swivel under the knee, 90 degrees here. It looks a bit weird. No feet whatsoever. His legs just end in stubs. But given the blocky nature of him and his toughness, I like the overall look. I have no complaints about the things that he's lacking, because the things that he does do, he does very well. Especially these shiny, smooth surfaces. All this front panel is die cast, and he's got nice heavy-duty metal pins in him. He's quite heavy. The back part is all die cast here. This is all die cast. Pretty well constructed toy. You can open this panel at the front to show something inside later on, but we'll get to that in a moment. The next character is Uranus. So here we go. He forms one of the arms of Godmars. He's got a lovely little sculpt. His dome head gives him really good character. In fact, all of these robots have fantastic individual character molded into them, which I really love. It's one of my favorite parts about the toy. And you can see that he's pretty shiny, although he doesn't have much die cast. His die cast is just up here in his arms. And one thing to be careful of is that when you transform him into the arm mode of Godmars, don't force these. I've just worn a little bit of the die cast off here with some friction, because I was trying to fix a part on the inside of this by pushing something, and that was a bit of a mistake. As far as posability is concerned, his arms do seem pretty wobbly, but you'll find that they do hold their poses. It's just that one of the connectors is wobbly, but the one that holds it out is not. So it is capable of holding whatever pose you want, just with a little bit of give. He's got bends at the elbow, ball on the head, swivel at the waist, ball at the hip, about 90 degrees at the knee. If you click it back like this and transform it differently, you can get a little bit more motion at the knee. It's just due to his combining transformation, but I prefer to keep it in the middle like this, just for aesthetics. His foot goes up and down, and that's about it for Uranus. Pretty nice looking fellow. The next character is Titan. He makes up the other arm. He shares all the same posability, so I won't go through that again, but he has a very distinctive look, which is much different from Uranus, and he's a good character in his own right. I like the colour. He's got a kind of pearlescent deep green, similar in some ways to Transformers Classics Hound. If you look at his face, I definitely feel that same kind of vibe as some of those Classics heads. So these guys, they look pretty good on a shelf with Transformers, just because of their aesthetic, more so than some other solid Chogokins who look more super robot. These guys have the kind of boxiness which a Transformers fan can grow to appreciate. Next we have Shin. Shin makes up one of the legs. The legs are quite heavy, so these parts down here have got some die cast in them. The thighs have more die cast. He's got these metal clicky joints. It's a bit hard to see on camera. If I can just make it focus. Come on, focus. Listen. Some nice heavy duty metal on metal clicky joints in the shoulders, and I'm surprised that's in there because those joints do nothing in the Godmars mode, so it really wasn't necessary. They just did it purely for the goodness of the individual character, which is nice. Posability, he's got that. He's got up and down here, swivel at the bicep, about 90 degrees at the elbow, a little bit of wrist due to transformation. His head is on a up and down with a swivel, so the equivalent of a bowl. Swivel at the knee, one click at the knee, and tilts at the ankles. Looking at his face, again, another really characterful design and a really good use of paint. The yellow brings out this guy's individuality and separates him from the others. I also quite like this shiny see-through red plastic with the silver detailing behind it, and they've gone to great lengths to separate out each one of these figures to make them stand apart from the rest. And you know, every one of them looks like a good character on his own. I love this shininess they all have. Flat, shiny panels. There's a lot to be said for nice detailing on figures, but sometimes just these broad panels that look so smooth, they have their own merit, you know. Let's get to the next figure. Here we have Raah, and Raah is one of my favourite characters from this set. All around, I really like every detail he's got. I like his use of thick, bright yellow paint. It's got no transparency. You can't see anything behind it coming through. It's really applied well. I like his posability, which is the same as Shin. I love his face. If you look closely, if you just let me focus, he is one of the good guys. You can definitely tell he's one of the good guys just by his smile and big blue eyes. He is really awesome to look at. I feel like he fits in with my other robots really well. I also love the use of this see-through yellow plastic on the front. Again, it really separates out him from the other characters, giving him his own unique personality. Yeah, actually he definitely is my favourite from the set. Now we get to the transformation. It's pretty straightforward. Just straighten out these arms up and down like this. Make the head straight, legs straight. Bend this panel down like so. It's just going to give us clearance later on, and also right now allow the head to rotate up like this. Once the head is up, you can pull this crest up as well. Don't close it yet. Bend up this panel into this position. Then fold the shoulders up like this. Fold these panels out to the side and extend them the full way. Disconnect the shoulder at the bicep and then bring it down like this, and that will just give you enough room to move the arm in. So again, I'm going to disconnect. Got to make sure it's straight, and if you don't make sure it's straight, it'll actually start wrecking the plastic. Got to be more careful when I do that. Bring this around like so, straighten off that fist, and now the arms are in here. Once that's all nice and even, just move these panels up and friction will hold them in at the side. Finally, bring down this chest panel, and there's some little tabs at the sides. You just want to line it up so that it all goes together nicely. Finally, close that off. Moving to the next piece. Both the arms are the same, so I'm just going to show it on Titan, but you know, Uranus transforms exactly the same way. So we just compress his arms like this, fold out the shoulders like that. This back section actually bends back, so it's not the chest that moves, it's the back. I like to rotate the head around to give a little bit of clearance, clip up that a little bit, and then that separates and can bend down like so. The next thing is rotate his head back the way that it was and fold it in on itself till it's fully in this position. The next thing is we want to move these hands so that they're like that. That will just allow you to put it into the body cavity. When you've got it in person, it becomes pretty clear which way it's meant to go. It's just a little bit tricky to explain on camera. So the fists should be facing downwards, like this in the middle. The next thing is to move out this transformation peg. And I like to just angle it up one more notch than it has to be. Like that. So that when I close this, it can just fit past this little bump here. Close the tab at the top, move that down, it's one notch, and moving on to the legs. So grab these legs by the foot and the outer part, just push down on the foot like that so we can move up this panel. Do the same on the other side. What we want to do now is the foot that has no hand in here, just rotate it around, and then we're going to collapse or concertina this knee joint in on itself, just so that the leg, like the thigh, is inside the lower part of the leg. Then move the foot down and you can close that off. Turning it around to the other side, we want to fold the hand out from the outer side of the leg. Then we're going to collapse the thigh into the lower part of the leg, push the foot down, shut that panel, rotate the hand around. Grab those two halves and just push them together, and then bend the thumb out so that it looks more like a hand. And there we have an arm. Then just do the same thing exactly on the white guy, Uranus. To transform the legs, it's pretty simple. Straighten out the arms like this. Put his leg units together and just clip them in place, and then compress downwards. Grab the chest, open it up, fold his arms straight out like this, and then compress them in. Bend his hands down with the palms inwards like that. Lift his head up into this position, and then rotate the head around, and then put the whole thing down. Bring the arms forward, and then bend them in to the cavity. Just close up the chest. That's done. A leg. Do exactly the same for Shin. Now it's time to combine. So the combination always starts with Gaia. Gaia's the first guy in the scene. Then Sphinx. So here comes Sphinx. We just lift up the chest like this. It's good to move this panel out of the way. Open these panels down here. And there's a little clip in here that Gaia clips into like so. Put his legs down here and close the panels back up. Then just move this down. Lock it in. There you go, you can see Gaia inside the chest of Godmars. Close this up. Now, if you look closely, it's pretty hard to see. If I can get, I'll get a bit more light, hang on. And focus. You can just make out Gaia's face inside the faceplate of Godmars. In the cartoon, what happens is that it moves up like this as the final part of the transformation, and they've molded that in so that you can see that awesome little detail through his mouth. Next, grab Shin, and you can see in here that there's a channel just right for Sphinx's foot. Sphinx's foot locks in. Grab Raah, locks in. Grab Uranus, tabs in like that. Grab Titan, he tabs in like that. There we have it, 6-god combiner Godmars. Pretty awesome. If you own this guy, the first thing that you're going to notice once you get him into combine mode is this. He is heavy, rock solid. There is so much metal in this guy. You could hammer. We feel like you could hammer a nail through a piece of wood with him. He's just a brick of a character. But being a brick, we get limited posability. So he's got almost no hip motion. He does have this 90 degree at the knee, but it's a very long lower leg and a very ugly knee joint. We've got the swivel still. We've got full range at the shoulder. The in and out is pretty limited. Swivel at the biceps, a little bit of motion at the elbow, and a ball at the head. And that's about all you get with this guy. Looking at his detailing, it's really quite beautiful. So he's got a lot of broad flat panels, as I was mentioning earlier, and he looks pretty good from every angle. So I like the clear regions, how it's broken down, white, blue, white, or dark light, dark light. It gives him a kind of sense of purpose in his design. Less random than, say, a Voltron or something like that. For some size comparison, here we have our War for Cybertron Bumblebee again. So you can see Bumblebee, a deluxe figure from a couple of years ago, is pretty much the same size as one of these leg guys. So he poses well with Raah and Shin, and I mean, they're nowhere near the same scale as each other, but the individual robots do fit in good with Transformers because of that. Next, here we have Baikanfu, next to Godmars. Very similar in height and in weight. Baikanfu is just a little bit lighter, but both of these guys heavily use die-cast, and you can really feel the heft. Baikanfu was my first Soul of Chogokin, and I picked him because I love this gimmick of Kenryu inside, the robot in a robot, and I just think that's fantastic. Godmars has a bit of that going on, you know. He's got robot in a robot, so these guys are kind of brothers of a sense in that they share that idea. When I first saw Godmars, though, I didn't know that. I've got to say, I picked him purely just because I love the way he looks. He's awesome. Next we have a, what's this, Toynami plastic version masterpiece Lion Voltron Force. So I know it's not a Soul of Chogokin. Rumours have it we're going to be getting a SOC Go Lion. I don't know how much credence to give to that, but if we do, I'll have it instantly. But one thing that bothers me about these guys together is that Voltron is too big. I feel like he shouldn't be bigger than Godmars. Why couldn't they make Godmars a little bit bigger? I don't know. But let's just hope this guy can be retired as soon as possible. And seeing Voltron standing next to this guy, it kind of enlightens me a bit about the background for these combining robots. So in the West, we all get this feeling that Voltron is the be-all and end-all of guys who join together, and for the longest time I just wasn't aware of what had gone before in Japan. I wasn't even aware that Voltron was Go Lion, but seeing other guys like this Godmars and God Sigma and Dyuja, it sort of educates me about the long tradition that we get from Japan and what we could have had in the West if Voltron's popularity had continued a little bit more. So for weapons, Godmars has this beautiful sword, very shiny chrome, and if you look carefully you'll see it's kind of an M. I know it's really stretched out, but in the cartoon he's got this Mars symbol here. I don't know, it's Mars attack or something, I'm not sure, but it shoots out and then it's like out comes this sword. It's like the attack stretched out into the sword, and it looks really nice. It has these little notches in the side here which match up with some notches in his hand, and if you can get them just right and close the fists on it just right, it'll hold it properly, but that is not done solidly. I've just put it in loosely, but he's capable of holding his sword just fine. Mars! It looks really good. He does also come with an assortment of hands, so we get this single sword holding hand, which the sword can be forced into, but I feel it's not a good idea. The sword is a little bit flimsy at the hilt, and pushing it into this hand doesn't seem like a good idea. We get one of those. Then we get two punching fists, so you can pull off his transformable hand and just put these two fists on. But again, I don't care for that. I prefer working fists than removable fists. And then we get these two hands, which are quite nice looking for Sphinx. And I haven't had cause to put these on yet, but I may end up using these someday because they look pretty good. Maybe if we get a reissue of Godmars, I'll display them in that mode. And finally we get two little white hands which are kind of stuck in the tray. I can't be bothered to get out, which are just used for the Gaia figure, but they're tiny and pretty unnecessary. Next we get this tiny little spaceship, just very little, and it can fold up kind of like this. Next we get this spaceship, which is a bit bigger. And it looks a bit weird. I'm not a big fan of it. These ships are prominent in the cartoon. They're in pretty much every episode, almost every episode. And his team, his comrades, fly around in these spaceships. Next we get this one, another little bit weird looking. And the reason they all look a little bit off is that they can combine, which I'm going to show you now. So we take this one, fold down this flap, get the little ship, and just slot one of its fins into the bottom like so to hold it in place. Push it in a bit, something not right here. There we go, that's inside. Then we do this. Next we get this one and fold back the nose like so, and just angle it out like this, leaving these gaps here. Then we get this and fold up the wings, and these will make the kind of tail of the overall ship, which is called the Cosmo Crusher. They slot between those wings, and then its tail can tab into the underneath like that, just leaving us with these sections at the front which need to be clipped on. And if you've done it right, it'll stick together like that. And here we have the Cosmo Crusher. I do feel that the Cosmo Crusher is a little bit out of place in the set, and that's just because Godmars is so nice and shiny, and this guy is pretty matte and obviously made to a lower standard than the figure, but given its huge expense, I guess they had to throw something else in. You can also pull out the rod from the Gaia stand and put it on this base and join it to these other pieces, and that will allow you to just connect it like this to make a stand for the Cosmo Crusher. So if you want to put it on display, you have the option to do that, although I prefer to keep those parts for Gaia. My final thoughts on Godmars. Now this is old, I think from 2008, something like that, so it's not a set that you can just go and pick up from anywhere. It's going to be expensive no matter how you get it, and most of the time the only places you're going to find it at the moment are on eBay. There's been the odd rumour now and then that it'll be reissued. I wouldn't hold my breath. It'd make a lot of sense to reissue, but then again it's got a ton of die cast which might put Bandai off. I can't remember exactly what I paid. I think it was more than 400 with shipping, and I got a fantastic deal on this. Normally you're going to pay 500, 600, even 700 for one of these at the moment, but I got mine used off a source that I have a lot of confidence in, just given my past history with them, and it was virtually new. So unless he had told me it had been used, I would not have been able to tell that it was used, so I was very lucky to save a substantial amount of money on it. But if you want to get this off eBay, be prepared. The 500 plus territory at the moment for this guy. At least for me, it's definitely worth it. I've wanted this character for a very long time, and unlike some figures that I bought, I've wanted it not because of the fiction, just because of the way it looks. I really like the way it looks. I really dig all these blocky details. To me, he's one of the best combining robots that there are, just based on his visuals, not based on his show. And combining robots kind of sparked my interest back when Miracle first announced their Daruga, and I've looked at this guy over and over since then, so I'm satisfied with it, and if you can afford it, I can highly recommend it. But having said that, it is a bit overpriced in the market at the moment, and if you've got the patience to hold on, if you can be that kind of person, then yeah, definitely it's probably going to pay off. Sooner or later it'll pay off to wait, because I can't imagine that with the demand he's got, Bandai can ignore it forever. Are there any drawbacks? Sure, there's drawbacks. Every figure has something wrong with it. I mean, take a look at this. In the filming of this video, I chipped this paint off the back of Uranus. I was being a little bit careless off camera, and I did that. And that's the price you pay for die-cast. So I don't like die-cast in toys that I play with, but I don't generally play with toys like this. I stick them on a shelf and look at them, and that's what this guy's intended for. So I think die-cast is very appropriate for this figure. I also have a God Sigma on the way currently, so hopefully when I review that figure I'll be able to show you a comparison of Godmars versus God Sigma. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about this guy. This has been Godmars GX-40 Soul of Chogokin from Bandai. I'm odeean, and thanks for watching. If you ever watch the cartoon, you'll realise that Godmars is actually hardly ever in his own show. Every episode consists of a bunch of bullshit happening, Gaia getting his ass kicked, and then 6 robots combine. Godmars taps them with his finger and they drop dead. He's in the show for like 30 seconds an episode. He's a real super robot. Totally awesome. I love it.